Hi everybody, I'm Zilla Blitz, and welcome to the final episode in our playthrough of Keep 'em Rolling Race to the Rhine from Phalanx Games. Can either Monty or Bradley get across the Rhine, or will the Germans deny us? Also, if you've entered the drawing to win a free copy of the game, we'll be drawing that at the end of this episode. Let's get started. Here's a quick snapshot of our campaign as we resume it in this final episode. The British have made good progress, taking Dunkirk at the end of the last episode, which should allow them to push through this, but we have a cauldron of Axis resistance that they're going to have to make their way through. Bradley's forces have made more progress with the Germans, but their supply lines are way overextended and they have supply issues at the front once again. But most pressing of all is the fact that we only have 6 Axis tokens or units left to place. That is our clock too. So unless the British and the Americans can somehow start taking out some of these Axis units, I feel like time is going to run out, and then it'll be down to who's got the most medals to see who wins, either Bradley or Montgomery. Let's get started with the British turn 9. So for our British forces, I think our goal is going to be to try to knock out these Axis forces here, Ostend, push through to Ghent, and then to Reims, and then we can resupply and push forward to the north, going through Antwerp and Brussels, just off the edge of our map here. How to do that, we're going to have to take out these forces, and it'd be nice to know what's in there. Let's come up with a plan. So getting forward here, one thing that we can do before we play our 2 core actions as the British is we can play as a bonus action this recon card, which allows us to scout the top card in this deck. Oh, this is excellent. The 70th Infantry Division. I thought it might be, not hoping, I thought it might be one of the tougher ones. It's only going to require 2 ammo to be able to take this place. So here's the current status on our Canadians. What we can do right now is we can do a limited supply action into Dunkirk. Now that we've got this port open, we can bring these supplies up in here, and we can immediately take these and drop these on the Canadians. And now we can send our Canadians forward to attack Ostend, which is perfect because we'll need to expend 1 fuel. This is our second action now to move them. We'll push them up and start to launch an assault on Ostend here. And in order to take out the infantry division here, we need to expend 2 ammo, which is perfect. That's gone. This knocks out the Axis units in Ostend and allows the British to move in. They have captured Ostend, which is great. Now, this one has this, you'll notice this little token here. This is special. In the Ostend, this is a marker that says it allows you to bring a one-time limited supply into Ostend. You can only do it once, and then it is out of action for the rest of the game. But that will be good because we can do that next time and resupply the Canadians and have them push forward. So right now their movement has stopped, but they've knocked out the 70th Infantry Division, adding that to their collection of units knocked out. And that is the second British action here in turn 9. Now we go to the Axis resupply, the Axis reaction. You'll notice that on our Axis priority chart, we have knocked off all the ones that are already there. So that means that we use a different system for determining where the next Axis forces move in. And it's basically anything that's adjacent to this Dusseldorf, but these are all adjacent. The next criteria is the closest to a British unit here. These two are equidistant, so we are going to drop it in this one, which I think is at least a little bit south. I think we could put it in either one of these two. So Axis forces moving in there, surrounding the final objective here. However, the British also have Arnhem here, a bridge too far, that we could use potentially as a final victory location. So something to think about for the British here. That ends the British turn 9. Let's go to the Allies, to Bradley, the US forces. One thing I realized is we didn't look at the German counterattacks at the end of the British move. Right here in Hazebrouck, the Germans can actually counterattack. This space is connected. There isn't a British unit here, and there is no British unit that's adjacent to it, which means that the Germans counterattack here. This is removed, and the British lose that valuable ammunition supply, cutting a hole in their lines and cutting the Canadians off a little bit. I think we can figure it out, but still, it's not ideal here at all. Bradley's forces are kind of in a bind. Both of these corps really don't have the supplies to be able to push forward, and they've used all their trucks. They've got 1 left, which really isn't helpful. We kind of need Montgomery to trigger the logistics phase to reset things for Bradley's forces. Until that happens, however, I think we'll use our time to try to get ready for that next phase, which is going to be, again, bringing up supplies here to 7th Corps and 5th Corps to try to get them driving forward. which takes us way back here to Paris, where once again, for Bradley's forces here, let's bring in some limited supplies. We can always bring in one of each from the off-board supplies. So we'll bring in 3 here to Chartres. And then the other thing I think we could do that again, but I think the other thing we can do here is we can have 19th Corps, which has pretty much been hanging out in Paris and partying the whole campaign. They've not even crossed into enemy lines yet. Let's get them going. So off board, I'm going to remove one of their 2 fuel canisters here, and we're going to get them moving up. Now it's pretty straightforward. We'll have them cut through Paris and go up to Meaux and then up to Soissons here, and we will remove off board. They have actually pretty well loaded up with supplies and things like that. We'll remove one of their 2 fuel canisters, and now they have moved up and started to get in the battle. This will allow us to start to get ready to draw a line with Bradley's forces, because again, we have to worry about counterattacks, so we want to make sure we push these forward so we can kind of keep a line that the Germans aren't going to be able to counterattack as we move forward. So this is somewhat productive, but with time running out and Bradley's forces desperately waiting for more supplies, I'm not sure what it's going to mean for success for Bradley. It's time to move in more Axis forces in Bradley's theater here. And once again, we use this rule because the last place is occupied. We move it into a space adjacent to that is closest to an allied unit if that's all equal. So it's going to go in here to Caen across next to the north of Remagen, and that's where our Axis forces come in. Only 5 Axis markers left to go, so about 2.5 turns. As we go to the 10th British turn, we could do some stuff with the Canadians up by the front lines in Ostend and things like that. But one of the things that both sides are going to have to do pretty quickly anyway is to trigger this logistics phase, because the British don't have trucks and the Allies don't have trucks. So we're going to, if I'm playing this 2-player competitively as the British, I probably wouldn't do this now because it kind of screws Bradley over by not being able to move trucks and have supply. But because we're kind of playing it cooperatively to get across the Rhine, we're going to have the British take trucks. They need more trucks anyway, so we're going to have them with their first action. They're going to take these 3 trucks and put them in their general supply. And you'll notice now that there are no trucks left in the Allied truck stock. That immediately triggers the logistics phase. Let's work through what happens when that happens. So step 1 in the logistics phase is that the logistics level moves up. So Bradley's goes from 2 to 3, and we'll notice now he can draw 8 trucks when he takes trucks. He can place 4, and his limit now is 12, so that's gone up. Second thing is Montgomery's goes up by 1, so he's up to level 2. Likewise, he can place 3 instead of 2, and his limit is still 9. So that's the first step. Step 2 is we remove all of the trucks currently placed on the map, not the ones in each player's truck stock. So Montgomery keeps the 3 he just took, but anything that's placed on the map we take and we put back in the Allied truck stock. So we've taken all the trucks off the map and rebuilt the Allied truck stock. Step 3, which happens only in the first logistics phase, is that we add 2 trucks plus 2 trucks for each player to the Allied truck stock as well. So 2 plus 2 times 2 is 4, which is 6 total. So we're going to add 6 trucks to the Allied truck stock. We've added those 6 trucks, so the Allied stock is replenished, ready for both Bradley and Montgomery to start taking trucks out of here. The next step is that we refill the general stock. General stock has been refilled. Step 5 is our forces have to eat. Every corps must consume one of the food canisters on its card. If there isn't a food canister on the card or in its space, we have to flip that corps over. It can't move until we feed it. So I'll clean these off now. In this case, every Allied unit was able to eat, so no problems there. Next up, we reactivate the commander's special ability by flipping these cards over. Bradley and Montgomery re-energized. Montgomery can now take 2 extra supplies in any take supplies action, and then Bradley can use his bonus action of air support. The very last step is if that core air support function was used in the previous phase, it gets reactivated. So Montgomery can once again call in air support 1 time during this next phase. This completes the logistics phase, and now we resume the game with the second core action that the British can take. Now the British still have 1 action left, and recall we can take one time we can take a limited supply action here to Ostend. So we're going to do that now as our second action to get our Canadians back and resupplied on the move. So we'll expend that. We're also going to use Montgomery's bonus ability, which allows us as the British to take 2 extra supplies, anything we like, and bring them in with a supply action. So we are going to put our supplies into Ostend and then add the 2 extra. and that gives us fuel and ammo to resupply the Canadians, but the British action is done. Time for the German reaction here. One of the things we want to be careful with is German counterattacks. They have punched a hole in our lines here, but we do have everything protected, so no counterattacks this turn. It's time to place their marker, however. By rule, we have to fill up all the spaces next to Dusseldorf first, and so that's going to put Rheinhausen here. It's going to make that fortress a lot tougher for the British, but Axis forces moving in. Let's go to Bradley's turn. Bradley's forces badly need supplies, so they're going to take for their first action a take supplies action. We're going to take 3 ammo from the general stock and bring it into Chartres. Now we are ready to move, but the only problem is Bradley only has 1 truck left. So we're going to have him take trucks. Now at logistics level 3, Bradley can take 8 trucks, which is a happy day for him, but he still can't place them. So we're going to take the 8 trucks for Bradley. Over here in our allied truck stock, we're going to pull 4 and then 8 off and designate them to Bradley's area, and that's their second action for this turn. Now it's time to place the Axis reaction. By rule, we have to place it next to Remagen until it's all filled up. This is closer to an allied unit, so it goes here. There's only, however, 1, 2, 3 Axis tokens left. We're running close to the end of the game. We've got to start knocking out Axis units and moving forward. Go to the British 11th turn. It's getting interesting now. Our Canadians have plenty of supplies to pick from. I think we want to try to take Antwerp here. Now, because if we can punch through at Antwerp, check it out. We've got open sailing from Antwerp up here to Arnhem, potentially winning the game. Now, I don't think there's enough time, but I'd like to see how if we can get at least close to it. This is going to be a very delicate assault, however. We're going to use our second recon card, which is a bonus action. We're going to do it before we start our action, because once we start our action, we can't actually call in the recon bonus action in the middle of it. So we're going to use our recon action to see what we've got to face here in Antwerp. Hopefully not something too hard. Oh, nice. 716th Infantry Division. So we need 2 ammo for that. So let's load up our Canadians with supplies here. We're going to take everything, the 2 fuel, the ammo, and the food and stuff like that. And then we're going to have them drive up here to Ghent. So let's expend the fuel to get them moving. Let's move them up here to Ghent. First, we're going to have to pull one of these Race to the Rhine cards for that, one of the regular ones. Since this is so important, we'll do that first. Let's see what we get. Starving civilians, we can give them food to get a medal. Because we're so close to the end of the game, the Canadians are actually going to do that. We're going to have them sacrifice their food to get a medal, because that will give them 2 designated medals instead of Bradley's 1. So if it comes down to medals, that feeding the starving civilians might make the difference. With Ghent fallen now to the Allies, we can move our second Canadian up to Antwerp. Antwerp here needs 2 ammo, so the Canadians in a fierce firefight knock out Antwerp. This adds that back into the pool. The Canadians move into Antwerp, taking that one, and we'll notice here too that Antwerp is a medal space, so they get another medal. Second Canadians putting on a heroic show here. That's the end of the first Allied action. One of the things we can check for now too is encirclement, and it actually works out. We've got a front line built here, which means that we can check all of these spaces in here. Lille and Hazelbrook once again are encircled. The Ypres here is not, however, so this stays with that access marker. However, these spaces now will not be vulnerable to counterattack. However, with our Canadians up here at the front, one space that would be vulnerable to counterattack right here is Ostend. So I want to solve that problem, because that's kind of our supply line going north, going east. If we lose that, we won't be able to resupply the Canadians. We have a solution though. A move action 1, 2, 3 that gets them adjacent to Ostend. We can also bring them in with supplies here too, which means that Ostend here now is back and protected because we've got a unit adjacent to it. No counterattacks available for the Germans. They do, however, get to place their reaction. Time for a little bit of a correction here. I realized I've been implementing these placement of these tokens in the final spaces incorrectly in 2 ways. First is it doesn't go in the named victory space, because that already has an Axis flag on it. It goes in the space closest to it. So that was one error. The second error is that Remagen here is a victory space, so I need to move it out of that as well. But it doesn't go in Corm, because that's already a victory space with an Axis unit in it. So following the priority order, I'm going to replace these. It goes The spaces closest to this space, and then the space closest to the allied unit is the second priority. So I'm going to replace these correctly and then place the new marker for the axis. Okay, all fixed. So I've emptied out Dusseldorf and I've placed them by the priority rules, which is closest to this space. The second one is closest to an allied unit, so this here, and then if there's a tie, it goes in a fortified space, so that's why that one went there. That means that our next axis marker goes closest to Dusseldorf, which is 2 spaces, 2 spaces. This one is 2 spaces away. It's the last one that's 2 spaces away. Oh, Cleve is here too, but this is closer to an allied unit, so we're going to place it in Venlon. And that finishes the axis placement here. However, notice that the British here too, again, Arnhem's wide open. We can get a bridge too far. Could that be the success for the British? Let's go now to Bradley's phase. Bradley's options are really clear. We got to get these supplies from Chartres up to the front lines. So it is time to place trucks and truck supplies and truck supplies. Now, because Bradley's logistics level is at logistics level 4, we can place 4 trucks with each action. So I'm going to place these out. We're going to do that twice and move our supplies, 4 ammunition and a fuel, as far forward as we can. We place 4 trucks with our first action and we get our supplies all the way up here to Laon. Let's continue on. We only need to place 3 more and we can get everything up here to 5th Corps, and we will load them back up with ammo and fuel, getting them ready to drive eastward again. That is 2 actions for Bradley, and he is done. Let's go to the Axis reaction. Unfortunately for Bradley's forces, the door is shutting. Remagen here, the closest space to it, this is 3 away, and this also is 3 away, but this Liege is closer to an allied unit, so it goes here. So Axis reinforcements push right in front of Bradley's army. This is going to be tough. Time is running out for the Allies. British turn 12. I think we're going to fall 1 space short in getting to Arnhem, because we can get the Canadian supplies. They are 4 spaces away from Arnhem, but they can only move 3 in 1 turn. But we'll need some help from the Americans to be able to do it. Let's see how this works out. I think our main action first is going to be a limited supply into Dunkirk here along the coast, because we're going to need supplies to bring up that way. So we will do that. We're also going to need to kind of keep our supply lines open here a little bit. So first up, we're going to we'll truck our supplies up here all the way up to the Canadians by playing trucks now. So they can place 3, which is 1, 2, 3. Montgomery's trucks go in place. This was in Holst. And then we're going to truck those supplies up from Dunkirk all the way up to Antwerp and give them to the Canadians here. We'll put them there for the moment there. We'll take all 4 that were there. So the Canadians are resupplied, and that's the 2 British actions. There's no counterattacks. It's time to place one of the last 2 Axis reaction markers. So looking at spaces closest to Dusseldorf that don't have Axis markers in them, Cleve here has 2 spaces away from Dusseldorf, and it goes there. There's only, however, 1 Axis marker left. I think the US forces will be able to knock one out in this turn. If they don't, the game ends now. Likewise, I think Bradley's forces are just going to fall short here, but let's see if they can take on these Axis units in Liege first. Now, we can load them up with supplies that were just brought up here, and we can actually, it sounds like it's a legal move. I was wondering about this. We're going to spend some fuel to move with them, and then we can take this last fuel and load them up again before they go. So we can kind of spend this in the space before we go. But first, let's use Bradley's air support marker on this one here, his bonus action. So we will expend that and flip his card over, and that will allow us to see what we are facing here in Liege. Hopefully something, well, this is both good and bad, right? It's the 1st SS Panzer Division. It's going to be a tough unit, but it's also going to give us a medal. So let's do this. So first up, 7th Corps is going to spend this fuel to move, and it's going to move forward up here towards Liege, and then it's going to engage the 1st SS Panzer Division. It's going to need fuel and 2 ammo to knock them out and to win that battle. That takes this out, expends the bonus air support. We still have 1 left, the regular air support. The Axis counter goes in, which means the campaign's going to extend 1 more turn. Liege falls to the Allies. Now we have the option here of spending another fuel to drive forward. And because I think this is honestly the end here, if we could come up in here in Maastricht as Bradley, we are going to get another medal. So let's spend that last fuel, come up here and see if they can take this space, which would give them another medal. Now this one here is just a regular space. So we're going to pull one of our Race to the Rhine cards here. Let's see what we run into. We get a truce between Finland and the USSR. It just changes the weather. It's no impact on anything. So 7th Corps drives in here and liberates Maastricht, or captures Maastricht in this case, and we take it, giving the Bradley's forces another medal. That's now 3-2. It's going to be close on the medals here. I'm not quite sure who's got it. That expends the US first action because the using the fuel just continues on your action, but 7th Corps once again is out of fuel, and there's going to be no way we can get supplies to them before it is. So that's the farthest they got, 2 spaces away from crossing the Rhine here. But let's go now to their second action. The problem with this extension here is that this space here, Namur, is vulnerable to counterattack. And if we do lose this to counterattack, the Axis would place their new reinforcement marker in there because it's reopened up here. So we don't want that to happen. So we're going to activate 7th Corps. Now there's fuel here that they can grab. We'll put the food on them. We're going to expend that fuel and just move them up 1 spot to keep this connected. This is next and adjacent, and it goes all the way back down to Paris. So they've got a line of supply here. So that worked to prevent the German counterattacks, but it's time to place the German marker, and there's only 2 left here. The closest space unoccupied next to Remagen is here in St. Vith, and that's where it goes. That's easy. Bradley came so close, but it doesn't look like they're going to make it. However, we have one last turn. There is 1 access marker left to place, so we have 1 more turn to go. Let's go to the British. Go to the British forces. It is just a bridge too far. We could go 1, 2, 3, perhaps if we succeeded all the way here and drive the Canadians right here to just shy of Arnhem. They literally came 1 space away, because as soon as you get it, you check for a supply line and you would win the campaign. Canadians just falling short. How historical is that? However, given that, it doesn't make sense for us to go up there because they will get cut off immediately after that and kind of things. It will create all kinds of problems behind us for supply. And the best way now for the British to win is if they can get more medals. And I think the best way to do that here is to try to capture Brussels. So we're going to try to focus our efforts on that instead of crossing the Rhine. So for our first action, the 1st British Corps here has exactly 1 fuel left. So we're going to move them 1, 2 up here. This will protect our front and protect our supply lines. And now we're going to have the Canadians take all of this stuff, add it to their amount of ammunition and fuel that they have right now, and we are going to have them launch an attack here on Brussels and try to capture that here, because this will give us a medal, and the unit might also give us a medal. Now we don't know what's there, we don't have any recon left, so we're just going in blind. We've got to expend a fuel to move, and we've got 2 ammo and a fuel. Hopefully it won't be more than that. Some of these units do have 3 ammo. Let's see what they run into. Oh, 17th SS Panzer Grenadier Division. It takes a fuel and 2 ammo, which they exactly have. Brussels falls. That puts the access marker off there. Canadians gain control of it, which is good, and that gives them another medal, which is their 4th designated medal as they take that area. Also, if we look now after this move, right here, Orange is encircled, and so that falls to the British forces as well. That ends the Canadian movement. This will end the British advance. So they got as far as Antwerp, but they did get a fairly hefty amount here. This also gets them a medal for defeating that unit. That could be what they need to win this campaign, but the Allies have 1 more shot. The Americans have 1 more shot. We do need to place our next axis marker though. So the next closest to Dusseldorf are 3 spaces away, and this here, Diest, is the closest to an Allied unit. I'm not sure if you're supposed to count the other Allied units. probably. So it goes here. In either case, it's also closest to the unit in Brussels now too. So Axis forces defending their homeland here. We go to what will be the final, probably the final movement by Bradley's forces. One quick correction on Bradley's forces. This Saint-Quentin here could be counterattacked in the last turn because there's no allied unit. Oh, yeah, there's no allied unit close to it. And at this time of the end of the last turn, this unit here in Mons could drive a supply line all the way back to its German homeland. So Saint-Quentin here falls to the German forces in a counterattack. No big deal really for anything in terms of victory points and stuff like that, but it does fall. If we go to Bradley's forces here, there really isn't much they can do. 5th Corps is out of fuel. If we come down here to 7th Corps, they are also out of fuel. The only thing that has any fuel left is down here is 19th Corps. It doesn't really make sense to bring up supplies or add trucks. That's not going to add any victory points. However, we can have 19th Corps here try to cut over here to maybe Laon and then come up and try to regain this ground in here. They might potentially get some victory points in here. So we'll do that. We're going to take the last fuel off of 19th Corps. They have an ammo and a food left. Have them come up here to Laon. We'll have them grab that food there just to bring it along with them. Then they're going to have them move over to Saint-Quentin here, and we'll have them see what kind of opposition they run into. So in Saint-Quentin, they have Les Boches. That is the end of their movement and their end of their turn. So they do regain this ground here that they lost to counterattack in the last turn, and that will end Bradley's efforts. We could do one more action, but I think I'm just going to pass. It's no way it can provide any benefit in terms of victory points, and they really can't move anything. They've totally exhausted all of their fuel resources. And with that, Bradley's campaign comes to an end as well. We have one more action, but there's really nothing that we could do that could potentially have any benefit. So I'm going to pass on that, and that with that we will place the last Axis marker. So in this case, there's no spaces left in Bradley's sphere that it can go in, but the rules say the nearest allied unit that's closest to the place here. So this actually would still be Louvain here, even though it would go in the British sector, just because there's no place left to put it in Bradley's sector. I think that's right. I mean, it's kind of a moot point at this point, but that's where I think we would place it. In a moment, I'm going to tally up the victory points to see who won, but there's one rule discrepancy that I want to talk about before we tally up the victory points, because it impacted play a little bit. So the rule error that I made here is that the player limit on trucks here is listed as 9, 9, and 12, depending upon the level of logistics that the side is at. I assumed that this was the amount of trucks in the player's supply that they hadn't deployed yet, as well as the number of trucks that they had already deployed on the map. But that's incorrect. It's only the number of trucks that the player has taken in their own personal supply that they have not yet deployed on the map. Now, that sounds like a small thing, but it actually impacted the game in two ways. First, it pushed back the number of times we hit the logistics reset, which made food a less important variable in the game. There was a comment on the last video that said, doesn't seem like the troops are eating that much. We would have had logistics checks much sooner had I interpreted this limit correctly. The second thing is, it would have bumped up the resetting of trucks and increased the force's logistics level more quickly, giving them more capacity to resupply. So I think it would have made it actually easier in that way, because they would easier for the Allies, because they would have been able to resupply faster and put more trucks down. But it would have made it a little bit harder, because they would have had to pay more attention to food. So that's something to be aware of if you're watching this to learn how to play the game. That was probably the largest error in the playthrough, and it would have impacted play, I think, in a couple of different ways. Here we have an overview of the final situation. Despite not crossing the Rhine, both forces did make it quite a ways. I mean, we got 5th Corps within 2 spaces of its crossing the Rhine up here, and the British, had they driven on, they could have gotten to within 1 space, but they opted for taking Brussels and getting more of a historical victory point total there. So, this was really fun, but let's tally up the score here to see who won, Bradley or Montgomery. Let's determine our victory. Montgomery had 4 designated medals. Bradley picks up 2 designated medals. At the end of round 1, it's 4-2 for the British. Each side also had 2 of these kind of elite units that in and of themselves give them medals, so that makes the total at this point 6-4. The last thing to calculate are these non-elite units, and the way you figure out the victory points for those is you divide up the ammo boxes divided by 5 and rounded down. So this is 3 divided by 5 and rounded down is 0. So Bradley gets nothing for that, leaving him with a total of 4. However, Montgomery had 5 divided by 5 rounded down is 1. So Montgomery picks up another point there, making the final score a victorious British campaign, 7 medals to 4 over the Americans. I think a lot of that had to do with the drive into Antwerp and Brussels at the end, where they picked up a number of elite medals. I think they got 3 medals in the end there. So congrats to Montgomery and the British for their victorious campaign. And now it's a time we've all been waiting for. Let's go give away a free copy of the game and offer some final thoughts on the game. We're jumping right in. We've got a random name picker set up. I'm going to scroll down here. We can see all the entries from the people that entered the contest with the 3 correct answers to our little quiz there. Let's press our button. Good luck to you all. Again, you have to have a mailing address that I can mail to in the lower continental 48 states in the United States. If that's not the case, we'll pick an alternate winner and come back and do it. Good luck to everybody. Our winner is Joanne Pilar. Congratulations to Joanne. I will reach out to the email you provided in the contest, and then if I can just get a mailing address, we'll get the game shipped right off to you. Congratulations, and thank you to everybody who entered the competition as well. And that brings us to the end of our sponsored playthrough of Keep 'em Rolling, Race to the Rhine from Phalanx. Thanks so much for tuning in, everybody. Some final thoughts on gameplay. I really enjoyed my time with the game. There is a kind of a kind of a logic puzzler element to each one of the allies that you're trying to figure out and trying to figure out how to optimally move your forces through their own particular maze of challenges there. And then you've got the kind of the war game kind of France 1944 race across France and Belgium kind of theme to there that sits the game too, that gives this really kind of a cool historical flair to the game. One of the questions I know that people mentioned on the comments was, how deep is the game? Like, how replayable is the game? And I think eventually you're probably going to figure out some really good strategies with each of the allies that you play. But I've noticed in playing right now that playing Montgomery is very different than playing Bradley. And I assume playing Patton and then Patch Devers is going to be a different gameplay experience than Montgomery and Bradley. So you've got that as a solitaire player. You've got those 4 allies to explore that I think are going to present their own challenges. Then on the top of that, you've got These Armored Credentials, the solitaire game, which is going to add in a whole nother set, a whole nother layer of rules and a different type of gameplay for the solo player. Then you've got the 2-player, 3-player, or 4-player options, and you've got the Ultra or the OB West rules for dictating how the Germans play. So I think by the time you kind of unwrap all of those things, and you've got some optional rules, by the time you kind of unwrap all those things and figure out the gameplay, I'm going to guess you probably got a good 20 to 25 plays in it before you kind of probably play this out as, even as a solitaire experience. That's not to say, once you get to the 2-player, 3-player, and 4-player experiences. So I think there is a lot of depth and a lot of replayability here. And I really enjoyed my time with the game. I do want to keep playing it, especially now that at the end there, I figured out the player limit for trucks. That's going to change the gameplay a little bit for me there too. So definitely want to get somebody across the Rhine here soon. So I'm going to keep trying. But thanks so much for watching, everybody. If you have enjoyed this playthrough, you might also enjoy our series playthrough of Sherman Leader, which I'll put a link to it up here. You can check that one out. Thanks for watching, everybody. Take care. Bye.